What's up, everybody? How we doing? We're gonna give it about a couple minutes for everybody to get in the room, and then we'll start around here in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Jody, look how fit you look. I can't hear you. I'm surprised you're not riding the Peloton right now on this. You see what's above me? He is just signed in the last couple of days with Indy 11. Yep, and he has a chance. We're talking about Bobby Edwards, our goalkeeper, our first year. So he signed with FC Cincinnati, played with them last year. He got released when the new staff came in at the end of the season, and he just signed with Indy 11. He feels pretty confident they're bringing him in to maybe start.
We'll give it about another minute for people to get in, and then we'll get started and let people join us.
Kevin, can you do me a favor? Can you limit the amount of Gannons we have on this call?
Yeah, usually we like to have only one Gannon per call. We did make an exception for this call. We are allowing 2, but yes, you're right. We do try to limit our Gannons.
There are no limits to Gannons. Trust me. You don't want that. I could call so many.
We can see your nice smiling face, and your brother over here, too cool for school, won't show his face.
No, Matt just can't figure it out yet.
Yeah. He's still using dial-up down there.
Isn't it amazing how Pat got the brains and the looks?
I know. Good stuff.
I wasn't sure if we were going to mute anybody, everybody, nobody. So I was self-muted.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be a little relaxed on the mute button today, but typically it's an all mute show when we do these things.
Wise.
Except for Brooke.
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll have some other people coming in on the call. We have a good mix of alumni and parents that are signed up for the call. So, and we're also recording this, which we'll be able to send out to some of our other people who are in different time zones and unable to make today's call. But we're excited to have you guys here. Saturday, we are playing some soccer at GW. Like, who would have thought, back in March a year ago when all the craziness happened, and then as we progressed into the fall, that we'd be able to play soccer in the spring for an NEC championship and a trip to the NCAA tournament, which is really, really exciting. I know it's been tough. Our our coaches, our student athletes, even us as administrators. It's been a long road. It still is. There's a lot of, I always equate it. We're building a plane while we're flying it, and they keep changing the owner's manual on us every day. And so just trying to navigate through all the different policies and protocols for the pandemic have been interesting, to say the least, and challenged our problem-solving skills. But anyway, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Kevin Robinson Jr. I'm the Director of Athletic Development here at the Mount. And basically how today's going to go, we're going to talk about, I'm going to address some of the COVID issues and how the university has been dealing with it, just so you can have a sense of what everything that we've been going through. And then I'll let Coach Cunningham really dive in on the season, talking about where the guys are at, where he thinks they could be as we move forward, and then we'll do a question and answers. We have the questions that you guys asked via the form, and then we'll open it up for any further questions from that, and then we'll talk a little fundraising stuff at the end. That's what I do. Anyway, so it's been, like I said, it has been a very interesting road getting here with the pandemic. I will say though, the leadership at the university, from Dr. Trainer through our cabinet, our board of trustees, and on down, has been fantastic. If you look around the country, a lot of schools went fully remote. They didn't allow the kids to come and do in-person classes. They didn't practice in the fall. A lot of athletic departments decided to cancel practices and those type of things in the fall. We managed everything pretty well with the fall semester. Our teams were able to practice for the most part the entire fall. And then as we moved into the winter, our basketball programs were able to start competing and have been competing since November 25th. And as we moved into January, other programs started competing. Our bowling team and our water polo team have been competing. And then just the last couple of weeks, our lacrosse teams have started. And then we have both soccer programs, baseball, softball, track and field, women's water polo, all starting in the next, either this weekend or the next couple of weeks. So it's exciting to see our teams competing. It's always fun to have them out there getting after it, and we've been able to make it work within this pandemic. I will say though, the number one priority for us is the health and safety of our student athletes. So if we don't feel that they're going to be healthy or safe in the environment that either here on campus or going to an away game, then we're not going to put them in those situations. There's a number of policies and protocols that are in place. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they are put there so that we can protect our student athletes and protect our coaches, mitigate as much spread of COVID that we can. And our student athletes, our students, have really been responsible. They wear their masks. They stay. They do a good job on the social distance. Unfortunately, not in those large gatherings as much anymore, which kind of diminishes the college experience a little bit. But their understanding of why that is. And our student athletes have learned that they had to be adaptable. They had to be resilient. There's a lot of things that come up during this that are out of their control. One quick anecdote from our basketball season. Our men's basketball team about 3 weeks ago drove up to Providence to play Bryant. They were playing Bryant on a Thursday, so they were driving up on Wednesday. About an hour from Providence, they get a call that Bryant had tested positive, had a positive case in their program. Canceled both games. They were supposed to play Thursday, Friday, so stayed at the hotel that night. Then driven 7 hours there, had to drive 7 hours back. So those are the type of things that are going to happen. Schedules are going to change. We could be playing, FDU on Saturday. They could get a positive case, and then we got to turn around. The league tells us we got to play Central on that Saturday, and so they have 3 or 4 days to turn around and get ready. So we got to be adaptable. We got to be resilient, and I think our student athletes have done that. And then, one other thing I want to address too. Unfortunately, right now, we're not going to be allowing fans at games. It's a university policy, right? As we just make sure that our operations are good, that our cases are low on campus, that the Frederick County cases are low, state of Maryland cases are low. We are reevaluating this on a weekly basis, and our hope is that we are going to be able to have fans sometime in March. That is our hope, and that's what we're aiming towards. As long as the cases on campus stay low, there's no big spikes in the area. It is our hope that we can have fans. And then for away games, you just got to check on those opposing teams' websites to see if they allow fans. There's not many schools that are allowing fans, especially in this region. I know there's no NEC team that is allowing fans as of right now. And I don't foresee that with some of the New York and Connecticut schools. I just do not. I think we may be the first school that does allow fans when it comes to Northeast Conference play. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. But we really just want to mitigate spread. And a lot of times it's not about watching the game. It's about after the game. It's about congregating after the game and making sure that someone doesn't unintentionally cause spread within the program. One positive case, depending on contact tracing, could knock the team out for 10 to 14 days. And we just are really avoiding that. The season's very, very short this year, with limited number of games. And we want to make sure they get all those games in. That is our goal, and that they get a chance to compete for the Northeast Conference Championship here in the middle of April. So without further ado, I know I just threw a lot at you guys, and I do want to thank you guys for your time tonight and for coming on board. The support of the program that you guys give us is tremendous and always has been, and I know will continue to be. You guys have been awesome with Coach Cunningham, and I'm gonna let him take over from now. I've talked enough, and then we'll dive into some questions and answers after he gets done talking about where the program is. All right, Coach.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Thanks everyone for being on the call. It's been a whirlwind since almost a year to the date. When we found out that school was closing, the kids were going home. You can only imagine, initially the school was only temporarily shutting down. They sent the kids initially home for a couple of weeks, which turned in for the rest of the semester. The locker room looked like a bomb went off inside there. And then poof, the spring season was gone. The kids were all remote, and we were scrambling to, kind of salvage our season, if you will, for the fall, which changed pretty much on a weekly basis. We were anticipating that we were going to be able to play, and slowly as that date got closer, obviously we were informed that we weren't going to play. But the one value that we kept was to be able to train. And to be honest with you, the alumni that are on the call and the parents that are on this call, you should be so proud of these young men. I tell everybody this, I believe we were one of only 2 teams that went the entire fall without a positive case. So that's day in and day out, from the time they arrived on campus until the time that our guys left. We did not have one positive case. That includes the staff. And these kids, they're sacrificing a lot. It's not easy what they're going through day to day, going to classes, coming here, practice. So many guys in the locker room, so many guys out of the locker room, just everything that they have to go through. They've just been wonderful. And, we took the fall as a wonderful opportunity to just get better without the pressure of playing matches, without the pressure of traveling and missed class time. So we really pushed these guys all fall. And they were wonderful. Our fitness levels were never higher. The intensity in training is probably the best I've seen since I've been here. The talent pool that we're coaching right now makes things even more enjoyable. And the group camaraderie really has gone to a whole new level. And a lot of that is because of what these young men are going through together on a daily basis. So obviously, as we kind of went through the fall, we found out we weren't going to play. We just stuck to our plan of just getting better and getting guys used to our system and how we like to play and some of the things that they could expect in college soccer. Lots of strength and conditioning, obviously work we were able to do in the fall, which we normally wouldn't. So there was a lot of growth. And that growth has led not just to where we're at right now, but the mental growth was the big part. The getting over the hurdle of not playing, getting over the hurdle of just the day in and day out training, and just always kind of keeping our eye, just a step in front of us as we were kind of taking these baby steps towards the spring season. So the next obstacle we face is then we left here, and some of you guys know my background. I spent some time at Appalachian State, spent time at South Carolina, then I was at UCF for a while. You can probably see on this wall here, I've dealt with tremendous athletes before. So I've got data 20 plus years. And this team left here on the last week that we tested before they left for the kind of winter break, which unfortunately was 2 months. They tested anywhere near, at or near any team that I've ever had before. That's how fit they were going into the winter break. It was unbelievable. We run a yo-yo beep test, and these guys, we're able to collect data because we use Catapult. We're able to collect data from professional teams that all over the world that use Catapult. So we can do kind of comparative analysis. I obviously have data from all my other prior teams, and these guys were right on the mark. We had guys who were basically blowing up the test. I mean, guys scoring over 70, guys scoring over 65. It was, we left here in great shape. Now, when they came back for the next winter break, it was good because we weren't necessarily starting all over again. And here we are now 3 weeks really into our preseason, which is the spring. And we are now still testing right at the level where we left in the fall. So it's pretty much remarkable, the guys' commitment and the guys, as Kevin alluded to, the resilience that they have shown, to be ready for this kind of unexpected and unprecedented season that we're about to come across. So without further ado, the planning all went into, obviously, just when you're not playing scrimmages or exhibitions, if you will, you really are getting a lot of that in practice. So just to kind of give you guys an inside look, we do a lot with the Catapult. That's a good trigger mechanism for us for how we lay out a weekly practice. And some of that got thrown out the window because we're doing a lot more 11v11 than we normally would do. But we have to do that because basically you can imagine we're almost training 2 different teams every day because of COVID. We're anticipating we're going to have everybody available for Saturday, but that can change as we tested today. We find out today into tomorrow which guys are hopefully COVID free, and hopefully it's the whole team and everyone's at our disposal. But if not, then we've got to make sure that from player 1 through 30, which is on our roster right now, that everybody is ready to be called upon if necessary. And that's been one thing that we've been, really focusing on heavily, is holding every single player accountable for their position and their understanding. We recently just entered into an awesome agreement with a company called Huddle, which is handling, a lot of data analysis for us, a lot of video analysis for us. So, for the parents that are on the phone call, you can talk to your children. They're doing a lot more video work than they probably ever have done. We clip every practice, we video every practice. So when they go home at night, it's already ready for them to kind of look at and kind of see things. We can communicate through that. It's a real awesome virtual tool as well. The way that the communication works, and the players can ask questions and they can actually edit and show things and maybe tell us how they were thinking. But we're doing a lot more of that than we necessarily would do because, moving into this game on Saturday, we haven't really had an exhibition. So we've been trying to handle all that at practice. And now as this week came in, we've just been really going into our normal work week, if you will, leading up to a match. And that's with every single player, again, just being ready for the unexpected. But we're excited to finally play. The players are finally excited to play. It's a real nice carrot to dangle out in front of them to make sure that now they're staying COVID free and kind of minding their P's and Q's, if you will. But at the end of the day, it's been a long time coming. But again, I go back to, you should just so be proud of these young men for the sacrifices, the work they've done, and what they've been through. And I'm going to tell you a little story that's, some of you guys are aware of this, some of you guys are not. A year ago in the fall of 2019, the last weekend of the season, basically, my mom was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. And, unfortunately, we knew she didn't have much time to live. And then COVID hit. So obviously my family, we were very diligent about what we were personally doing so that we could go and visit my mom. Fast forward to the fall, as my mom's health declined, we also started then to deal with my assistant coach's wife, who is battling cancer. And so really these young men, it became very personal for them, that learning the idea of selflessness, that there's a greater good out there, because the guys knew that I was going to see my mom as regularly as I could. And that, my assistant coach was going home every night to his wife and kids, who was, a bit at risk. And these young men made a lot of sacrifice. And again, for us to go through, just really think about that, for 31 people, at the time it was 31, because we had a kid who was trying out. So 31 kids plus the staff, and we went an entire semester COVID free. And it was a total commitment on their part and dedication, that you can win a lot of games, you can win championships, you can send kids to the pros, law school, grad school. It was a very proud moment for me to see how much accountability these kids took on their shoulders in the fall. And now our hope is that we kind of use that same model here in the spring, and we can move through as a group and be ready to be competitive from day one, which is Saturday upon us. So I think if we should, Kev, if you want to move on to some of the questions.
Yeah, we'll dive into the questions, and then since any questions that came about with Coach Cunningham and my talk, we can address those too. But we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Stevie and his question that he asked. What strengths do you see this year, improvements over last year?
Well, I wouldn't just look at over last year. Over the last couple years, this has been an extremely rewarding process, building this team from scratch. And it was not without fault. We were, filling so many holes early on, and with that, becomes trials and tribulations and things of that nature, and guys learning how we want to play in our system. And so over the last 2 years, the growth has been steady. A lot of people probably don't know this. We're the second most improved team in Division I soccer from 2018 to 2019. Rutgers was the only other team that was ahead of us. So that was remarkable growth. One thing that we, really started to emphasize last spring, before unfortunately these kids all left us for COVID, one thing we started to emphasize is slowly getting players into their more natural positions. And that's more challenging than you might think when you start to encounter injuries and you start to encounter, the ups and downs of college soccer players. But ultimately our goal as a group going into last spring, knowing the players that we had coming on board with us in the fall, that we were really going to emphasize getting kids into their natural positions. So to answer your question, where we're at right now, if, what's projected, just based on, let's say we're COVID free and all these kids are eligible, in our starting 11 that we'll put out on Saturday, every single young man in that group will be in their natural position. So some guys that know from before, we had a great player, Boris Nanatanzi. I thought he was one of the best defenders in the country, but we would have to play him at center back one game, holding midfield one game, maybe move him up into a center midfield position in another match. It was just a lot of it was just the waves of who we were playing and where we would best utilize him. Well, we've moved in this group, especially with the work we did in the fall, we've moved beyond that with this group. Now we have settled in with the guys that have returned, the newcomers that have been brought in, everybody. When I put out 2 11s, like this afternoon's practice, both starting 11s, every single player in both starting 11s are playing their true and natural position. And to be honest with you, that's a huge value, because it allows you to move on to kind of higher learning, if you will, of training and tactics, when I'm not trying to teach a player a technique of a position. So I'm not having to teach, for example, there's a couple parents on the calls, I can kind of use their sons. Ian Buckwalter, we brought him from PA Classics. He's a true left back, where before we were teaching kids how to play left back. We don't have to teach him how to play left back. He knows different nuances of that position. Now we're just working on some patterns of play and some rhythm of play. We have a young man who his father's on the phone call as well. I recruited his son originally. He transferred to us, Gavin Watt, wonderful central defender. So I don't have to teach him how to play central defender. Now we can fine tune his position and work on him a little bit more individually about how he plays within our system versus teaching him how to play center back, then teach him how to play in our system. So this will be the first group that we've had on campus, kind of top to bottom, that everybody's in their natural position. And it's going to be a huge, huge value to the group. And then I think was there a follow-up question about the conference?
Yeah. Follow-up question. What looks like to be your toughest competition in the league?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I have no idea. Within our group, we are probably the most unique team in the conference, and I pride myself on this. We only have 3 international players on our team. The rest of our players are American-based, and I think we only have probably 1 player outside of a 5-hour radius from the campus, and that's our young man from upstate New York. We really want to own recruiting in this area, and Trevor's done a wonderful job. So our 3 international kids are very unique. In this league, it's a very top-heavy international league. A lot of these teams we play have a lot of international kids. So I couldn't even answer your question because, you know, in talking to some of my colleagues in the conference, some of their young men couldn't get into the States. Some of them have opted out of playing this year. So I really have no idea, short of when I start watching video and we can kind of see where they're at. I really couldn't even begin to tell you what this league will look like because there are so many teams that lost players to transfers, lost players to COVID not coming back. I would honestly say I feel very confident that we are probably in the pole position in the league as it relates to having an entire team and then having had the entire fall of training when other teams didn't have that at their disposal.
That's awesome. I know you had a really long-term plan when you started, and it sounds like it's progressing pretty much the way you wanted it to.
Yeah, if you, well, I grew up in the 80s and the A team, and when the saying of I love it when a plan comes together, well, it's really come together. It is. We've been patient. Some of you guys, Mr. Buckwalter's on the call. I've played golf with him, and some of you guys just know me from interactions. I'm an extremely competitive person and I don't like losing. However, we stayed true to our process. We didn't get out ahead of us. We just stuck to our plan that, you know, I really believed in when I interviewed for this job. And I really feel like it's really come to fruition. Even through COVID, we kind of muscled right through that. And obviously we've had some blessings. For example, you know, Mr. Watt's son coming back to play for us is just, those little things have kind of all worked out, and we're just happy to be in the place that we're at right now.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, Coach. Next question is going to be from Tom Harrington, and it's a 3- and 4-part question. So we're gonna have to hold on. You're gonna have to roll with me on this one. All right. So first part is interested in your approach to creating a winning team culture in the face of the COVID-19 challenge. You touched on it a little bit, but how's that been creating that winning team culture within COVID?
It's a great question. And the best way I can answer this is any culture to me always begins in the recruiting process. So when you're recruiting these young men out of high school and you're talking to coaches and you're meeting with these young men and their parents, you know, that's really where you learn what these young men value, and does that value line up with, or those values, if you will, line up with our own values within this team. As it relates to COVID, it's been a huge obstacle. A lot of people probably don't realize this. We don't do a lot of high publicity about this, but our team, you know, prior to COVID, we did a remarkable job as it relates to community service, things we were doing, working down in Frederick with the mission, working marathons, you know, working at homeless shelters, working boys and girls clubs. These guys were really on point. And, you know, so when we're bringing kids into that culture, you know, it kind of manifests itself. And I'll kind of speak to, you know, how we kind of cultivate leadership within our group in a moment. But, COVID did kind of put a pause on that. And, the thing with our players is, through COVID, we did an awesome job between my staff and your, obviously your soon to be fellow alums and your sons on this call. Basically, the communication started with, prioritizing Zoom calls with these kids, making sure we were staying in constant contact with them through all the, nonsense through May, June, July, August, leading up to getting here. And then obviously when they come on campus is really reinforcing with them what we value. So really for us, COVID didn't really change anything except for how we really delivered that message, it was via Zoom calls versus in-person meetings. But, just to touch on that briefly. So what we try and mesh with players that we bring in is they, every kid that sits in my office when we're recruiting them, we walk them through a fairly extensive recruiting presentation. And it involves a lot. It involves academics and what our expectations are from them in that area, social behavior, and then obviously soccer wise. Because what I always tell kids, and I want everybody that I obviously recruit to come play for me, but it doesn't always work out that way because they got to make sure that their values align with our values. And those three pillars of academics, your social well-being, and then your athletic well-being, they all have to mesh. And it all kind of gets brought into our core values that we preach with these guys. We talk about communication, chemistry is really big with us, discipline, and then professionalism. So if you think about those core values when we're recruiting you, then you come into campus and you come into our group and you embrace those values that you already have, and you kind of then begin to embrace our values. And then as part of the cultivation process, and I think kind of the follow-up question that is, how do we help the young men and the young leaders, if you will, is I'm a firm believer in servant leadership. So one of the things that we do, I don't know if it's really unique to the campus, or unique in the world, but we have a nice pod system. So we separate these guys into different pods. It's based on academics, geographics, diversity. We have a lot of different variables. We study a lot of different personality traits. I'm very fortunate through my travels and everywhere I've been. I've got some really high-end people that can help me when we kind of look at all the different players within the team and that dynamic and kind of who should be in what pods. And then we make sure that we kind of have, in every pod, we have good, if you will, servant leaders for these young men to learn from. And in a perfect world, non-COVID world, we have competitions based with that pod system in terms of community service hours, doing stuff on campus, competitions when we're practicing and things of that nature. Right now, some of that's been tampered and limited, but it's still a base for us, if you will, of how we preach about, what are our core values as it relates to everyday life, and then how do we translate that to the game? How do we translate that to practice? So in practice, again, if we value discipline and we value professionalism, it's taking care of your body off the field. It's making sure we eat right, we sleep right, we get here early, we make sure that we're good to our teammates, we learn how to greet people, not with a text message. We have a big thing in here in terms of how we say hello to each other every day and how we speak to one another, which I think is a really big a value that's lost on kids when they leave here. So we want to make sure that we're teaching them how to make eye contact when they're talking to somebody, little things like that. And then when we're on the field, we want to make sure that we're applying those same values to how we approach a match. So everything that we value off the field, we value on the field. And then we just add the soccer element to that, is what do we value in the match? We value, attacking possession. We value high pressure defending. We value high emphasis on the urgency of which we do set pieces and things of that nature. So we try and mesh all that together so that they're not just leaving here a great soccer player and I develop you and now you're done, move on. We're making sure that they leave here a complete person. So the alumni that are on this call, I make a promise to every parent when they're sitting here, because I take it very serious. I have three kids of my own. Everybody's dropping their son off here as a young man, and I take very serious that they're going to leave here a man. And I'm going to continue that nice little trajectory that they drop these kids off. And I'm going to be firm with them. I'm going to be discipline them. I'm going to have to hug them when I got to hug them, but we're going to make sure that I'm keeping them on the right trajectory so that, obviously they go on to be, good citizens and good stewards of the Mount, far beyond their years here with us.
Thanks, Coach. And I can actually kind of attest to that. Today, I was walking down the hallway of our ARC, and a couple kids were passing each other, and hey, yo, bro, what's up, man? And one kid turned to me and says, "I didn't call you bro. I didn't. I wasn't trying to call you bro. I was just talking to my teammate here." And I was like, "Oh, you can call me bro. I'm cool with that." But we had a nice conversation around, hey, we just want to be respectful to you and those type of things. And all three of them were looking me in the eye, and it just speaks to what Coach was talking about, that they really take that seriously of being respectful to the people on campus. So I can definitely attest to that. And one last piece from Tom is, with Gettysburg right around the corner. You and I both live in Gettysburg. A lot of teams use Gettysburg and its historical, the historical events that occurred there as leadership development. Is there any plans on going into Gettysburg with the team and using that as a platform for some of this leadership development?
Yeah, it's funny that Tom brought up Gettysburg. I'm sure if you talk to some of your sons, one thing we do here when we're going to decide who gets kickoff or who starts with the ball, things of that nature, I always ask them an historical history, like a nice question that challenges them a little bit. And a lot of it does have to do with Gettysburg, which is where I live, the Second World War, which is very dear to me because both my grandfathers fought in that war. My grandmother was a nurse in that war. So, I feel very, very dear to that one issue. And we always ask them trivia questions, and they're great. Right now, we do not have plans to go up there. Obviously, COVID kind of puts a little bit of a damper on that. But it's certainly something that we would entertain, because I think there's a lot of teachable moments, whether it's in Gettysburg or down in DC, and things that we do value. I do view, ironically, I view soccer as a game of war. And we do talk to the guys about that all the time. And the strategy of that, the strategy of taking space, the strategy of limiting space, the strategy of showing a team one thing and disguising it, and taking something from the other side. It's one of the things, like I said, if some of the parents that are on this call, if you talk to your sons, they'll tell you that. We do cover that a lot. We've actually been covering that the last few days because we've really fine-tuned our defending. And really we talked about how do you slowly corral a team and condense space, and how do you disguise how you're defending to make sure that we get them into the spaces, and we want them to play into the space that we want them to play in, with them thinking that they're being successful, so they continue to be in that space. But we always use war as a good stepping and a good jump off for what we're trying to accomplish. But it's certainly something in the future I would love to do. I just think there's history, there's around us, there's teachable moments around us, there's great instances of unbelievable leadership all around us. I get to pass the Eisenhower farm every day on the way to work. It just always gets me thinking. Kevin goes 700,000 miles an hour. I don't. Where he takes a right to come to work, and I'm going to challenge him right now. Where he takes a right to go to work, I go straight across, and I take my time, and I get to see the Eisenhower farm. I get to see. I try to take a deep breath and take it all in. He doesn't.
I'm trying to get my daughters to school and to daycare. I'm 100 miles an hour.
Right, but you have your kids. You should be teaching them about our great president Eisenhower there, and one of our greatest leaders, who retired to Gettysburg and onto a working farm nonetheless. Great questions, and Tom, you and I certainly should hop on a phone call at your leisure, if you will, that you and I can catch up, and I'm sure you have some wonderful ideas given your wonderful background that would really help this group of young men.
Yeah, look at guys, Coach, we're all pretty proud of what you guys have been putting together. My questions were really driving at the fact for the last 40 plus years, I've been hiring people in great jobs in the government practices, and obviously in some of the banks that I've worked for. And I always think about the fact that I want team players, and I want guys that have played organized sports. And there is absolutely no doubt that their ability to play as a team when they're corporate leaders it comes out. So I just love the idea of always kind of testing them and keep them going in the right direction here. Unfortunately, not too many of them are going to end up as pro soccer players, but they are going to end up in leadership jobs in corporations, the government, and other places. And we want them to really shine for us. So again, thank you. You guys are doing a great job under challenging circumstances, and we get it, and we're here to support you. So
No, thanks so much. And on that note, that's one of the other things we emphasize with the players, whether it's pro soccer or going to grad school or getting a job, is wanting to be the best, wanting to be the best. So if we run a fitness, test, be the best, want to be the best. And, I can help any one of these young men be a pro. I can help any one of these young men go be a lawyer. But then what's the sustainability? What have I taught you that you can use to then excel at that profession? And, I was telling the guys just yesterday is the kids that kind of push through. And I got, like I said, I got a young man just reached out to me the other day. He wanted to catch up, and he's working for the state's attorney's office in Florida. And he's been there now 6 years. And to me, that's remarkable. I mean, it's not easy work, and he's slowly moving up that chain. And that's what's important to me, is not just getting a job, but then excelling at that job and moving forward in that job. And that's one thing that we use soccer as a catalyst to teach that, which is fun for us, to be honest with you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to do one part of Pat Gannon's question now, and then I'll get to the second part here in a little bit. But how do you evaluate recruiting? What are your recruiting needs? And, how does that transform from year to year? Where are you looking at to get your recruits from, and kind of what help do you need in the recruiting world?
Yeah, and it's a bit of a loaded question. And I would never say that we don't need help in the recruiting, realm, if you will, in terms of, if someone sees a player or might hear of a player, that's wonderful. But we're fairly in depth with how we do things, and we're very deliberate in our approach to, who we think can fit into our program and into our system. And it's very detailed, and it's very organized. Trevor's my associate head coach, and he's my recruiting coordinator. COVID has changed recruiting a little bit in terms of seeing players live. Obviously, we're fortunate because Trevor, we beat the system a little bit because he coaches a very good team out of Bethesda. So he's at a lot of these events that other teams aren't, and he's on the academy staff with Bethesda. So we kind of have a little bit of a loophole, which is wonderful. But if you come across a player, we just ask that you pass it along, and just realize that there's no hard feelings if we don't feel like that player's a fit, or if that player's not something that we look for. There's a lot, like I said, and I go back to the very beginning. Like, we really look for specific things that we value from these young men as a person. We really look for what values they bring as a player, and then socially, what you can probably guess, Tom alluded to a little bit, I'm sure, in the corporate world, is checking out their social media, seeing what they're up to, what they're not up to. We really do a deep dive into every kid that we're going to bring into this program, because at the end of the day, we want them to be successful here. And as I'm here, more and more, we slowly see, what kind of perpetuates that success. So we really fine tune the kind of players that we look for, that we think can be successful here. And it's not just soccer ability. That's one aspect, but then you got these other little 3 pillars that we kind of look for in these young men. And then a lot of it's based on the programs that they're coming from, and the coaches that they played for, so that we can kind of have a nice little system of, checks and balances, so that we know exactly, what's going to arrive on here for us to, kind of train and coach and coexist with, as you can very well imagine.
And one last question before we kind of dive into the fundraising piece of it. What's the ambition and target for the upcoming season? This is from Neil Saviter.
So I know this is going to sound crazy, but even that first year that I took over this program, and we were 6 points away from being the 4th place team in the league, which sounds really silly, but we just talked to the team about this yesterday, in fact, when we were kind of having a broad discussion. You're never too far away, or you're not as far away as you think. That first year with the program, we were winning 3 matches, I believe it was, in the league with 3 minutes to go that we wind up losing, believe it or not. So we weren't too far off of, the rest of the teams in the league. And a lot of that is, I feel like I'm a fairly adept coach. We can organize a team. We can get them together. We had some really good athletes, maybe not as great as soccer players, but we were able to kind of get them, put the pieces of the puzzle to work. Now, we made a huge leap in 2019, but we still fell short. We didn't have some of those letdowns that we had in 2018, so there was growth. And where we only won 7 games, I thought maybe we should have won 10 games if I was realistic. One more win, and in a game that we gave away on the road at Sacred Heart, and we were obviously in the top 4. So here we are now, another year removed. Even though the tournament, if you will, is going to be the number 1 versus the number 2. I feel fairly confident that we'll be fighting for one of those 2 spots. I love the group we have. I love the advantage that we have of training on fall. I look at some of the kids that are going to start for us on Saturday, and they're not freshmen to me because we just went through a fall. And even though they didn't play matches, we had a full slate of training. So they remind me of a kid that comes back after his freshman semester, and I look at them and I kind of feel like they're already a sophomore. So when we look at how we're playing and how we're doing, we'll see, kind of we start playing some opposition on Saturday, but I feel very confident about where we're at as a group. But we just got to be ready for the peaks and valleys of COVID and some unexpected things to happen, but hopefully we're ready for that.
Great. This question's from both Matt and Pat. It was very similar questions. I can understand that they're brothers. We're going to allow our double Gannon here. I know, Mike. I know. We're allowing the double Gannon here, but they both asked, kind of along these lines, what can the men's soccer alumni do more to help with the program? And then what specific needs you have that we can help raise funds for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as like helping, it's a lot to me comes down to, and I know it's difficult because we all have kids running all over the place, but when we kind of move past this COVID is coming out to matches, engaging, with your fellow alumni and encouraging your other fellow alumni to come to the matches when we get back to fans. If we're going to have a golf tournament, making sure that like, hey, I'm going to get 3 friends, but I'm also going to make sure that, they get another foursome, so we can really start to grow things so that we mirror the other teams, in this, not just in my building here, which is Waldron, but across campus, that have 40, foursomes when they go to a golf tournament. So it's little things like that. It's just being a champion for yourself, but being a champion and trying to bring some others along too, guys that you played with, guys that being a little bit generational, if you will, and kind of trying to just, bring someone with you or get, rally the troops, if you will, for, the different events that we're going to host and things that we're going to do is just making sure that, you're there and you're present and you're participating and you're showing your support. And I can't speak to, where this program and kind of the downfall in 2012. I can only speak to where we're at now. And we just need to continue to grow and have the excitement of the alumni and the support of the alumni and that kind of that fire in the belly that we had 3 years ago. We can't let that wane, in my opinion. And I take very serious that I got to put the best product on the field that I can, that represents all the alumni that have played, throughout this history of this great program. So we got to make sure we're putting a great product on the field, but we also want you guys there to enjoy it and know that it's your program. It's a total blessing for me to represent you. But we got to make sure we got you guys here in the stands and being excited and kind of carrying the torch, if you will. And as for fundraising, we're pretty good right now in terms of gear and things of that nature. The one thing that was in the works, obviously then pre-COVID, is we do want to take this group of young men on an international trip. Speaking to, kind of what Tom was speaking to before about kind of opening these young men's eyes to not just, what's going on in the corporate world and what's going on in our country, but open their eyes to other cultures, and other experiences. And we do want to take this trip with this group of young men that have been through so much. I would love to take this group on an international trip. We've looked at a couple different locations where we can make that happen, and that would kind of be like our next big get, if you will, to try and make this a financially viable trip for every kid on the team.
Yeah, and to go along those lines a little bit, the best programs have great commitment from all aspects, from the university, from their athletic department, from their alumni, their parents. Those commitments that they make, both with their time and then financial, really go a long way to rising programs. I've been a former basketball coach for 16 years. I know the difference that alumni support and donor support can provide to our athletic programs. They really do a good job, especially when it messes with the university commitments too. And I think Brian can attest that the Mountain is very committed to our athletic programs, and specifically our men's soccer program, in terms of making sure they have what they need. But there's also an understanding that our alumni and our donors will contribute to the program and try to help them achieve their goals. And there's a number of people on this call that have done a great job of being there for us in a lot of different ways. And we want that to continue. And to echo what Brian said, we need your guys' help of bringing some other people along. I think that is one of the big things. We need help in pulling in some of our younger alums, and then also getting your teammates who maybe just sitting on the sidelines going, I'm not sure what's going, like, get them going on. As you can see, we have a very dynamic coaching staff led by Coach Cunningham. We have a great group of young men out on the pitch, and they got to get to know them. They got to get to understand them. And the things that we always talk with our alumni about is, hey, when you come back, you want things to be different. You want the groups after you to have more than what you did. For many of you guys played on a grass field with very few benches, and an uneven field. Now we have a beautiful turf field. We play in a stadium, have a great locker room, and we want to keep building upon that. The goal is one day to have a soccer-only stadium that I can go out there and clip the grass to its perfect length and do all that. That's long-term goals. But in the meantime, it's giving back, making sure these guys have an unbelievable Division I experience, and then having some of these other things, such as an international trip. I think that is a great goal for our program to raise money for, and something that we will continue to talk about, and it'll give you guys an opportunity too to travel with the team and potentially somewhere nice, overseas, and see who these guys really are. Spend 5, 6, 7 days with them. So those are the opportunities that will be afforded for us in the fundraising. But we need your help. It's always the more help we get from our alumni and from our donors, it really elevates the program and it makes these guys have that really excellent Division I experience that we want them to have. So in that case, any other questions that we have from this group?
Hey, Kevin, just from a fundraising standpoint, if someone had an idea for a creative way to raise funds, would they submit it to you?
Yes. Yep. And then I'll work with Brian and the coaching staff, in terms of building that out. But if you have a creative way of doing it, I am always open to ideas. Having been in this role for about the last 5.5 years, my creative juices sometimes wane, and so I'm always looking for help. And I think the other piece too is we are looking for volunteers, some people to help us. We have it. I think men's soccer is one of our groups that have pretty good volunteers, but we need to keep expanding it and grow it. And we need that influx. And the other piece, and Tom touched on a little bit, we need our alumni to help our, now that we're finally having seniors on the team and guys graduating, we need to help getting them jobs. If they're not going to pursue soccer careers, we're looking for our alumni to help our graduating seniors, land some jobs. So I know it was a little bit long-winded answer, Mike, but I am always open to ideas, and feel free to shoot them out.
Yeah. I mean, and I was a judge on the Palmero Center Shark Tank event that they had a couple months ago, and it was COVID, so there were only like 6 or 7 students that submitted anything, but that, from a, hey, encourage the students to kind of do other things. I know they're going to have other events. So that could be, hey, soccer guys, if you've got an idea for a product or an idea or whatever, that's a group that you then have access to other alumni that maybe didn't play sports, but have abilities to get you jobs. And then what I was thinking about with the creativity was, I went to the golf event a couple years ago, and I live in North Carolina. So it was a little bit as a drive for me. And, I dragged some of my classmates from 96 with me because they didn't have a choice. If I was coming into town, they were going.
There you go.
But so they came, but we realized that there weren't a ton of alumni from our years that even knew how to play the game. So they sucked at golf, excuse my French, but they didn't want to go to it. And so I think there are some other creative ways that we could get more involvement. So just, I'm not saying cancel the golf thing because it's an excuse for me to go play golf. So let's keep that going. But other ways might help as well. Other
No,
people.
I appreciate that, Mike. So any ideas that you come up with, yeah, feel free to email me, call me. I'm always open.
Okay. Great.
All right, any other questions? Well, guys, I really, really appreciate your time. It's awesome seeing all of you guys. I know a number of you and really appreciate it. And I can tell you that Coach Cunningham and his staff are working extremely hard to have a very good season, to make sure our student athletes are first healthy and safe, but also reaching their competitive excellence level that they need to win this NEC championship. So there's no other questions. Say thank you. And for those of you that are interested in helping back and giving back to the program, you guys have my number. Feel free to give me a call, and we'll work with you on that. So thank you very much.
Good luck, Coach. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much for your time.
Good night, Brian.
Okay.
Game on.
That's
Thanks,
right.
guys. Take
There we
care.
go, Jody.